He can't lift heavy things anymore. He sometimes forgets the keys. But every night, he tucks her in, warms her tea, and kisses her forehead like it's their first date. This isn't a love story from the past, this is what real love looks like after 60. And what you're about to hear will challenge everything you thought about intimacy in old age. Part 1, Age changes the body but not the depth of love. Linda sat by the window, watching the morning light spill across the garden. Her hands, lined with time and years of tending both flowers and family, rested gently on her lap. At 63, she no longer rushed into the day. Life had slowed but it had not dulled. Her husband Robert, now 68, entered the room quietly. He carried a steaming cup of chamomile tea and a folded cardigan, simple, thoughtful acts that had become his silent language of love. They had been married nearly 40 years. 4 decades of weathering storms, raising children, paying mortgages, navigating losses, and rediscovering joy. But now, in this quieter season of life, something deeper was unfolding, a love that no longer needed grand gestures to be felt. We are not who we were, and that's okay. Robert used to be full of energy. In his 30s and 40s, he was the one hauling suitcases, mowing the lawn without a sweat, fixing leaky faucets at midnight. He was a builder, a protector, a man whose presence filled the room like thunder. Now, arthritis slowed his steps. A heart condition made heavy lifting out of the question. But while time took strength from his muscles, it seemed to add softness to his gaze. He watched Linda now with more patience, more reverence. "She misses how we used to dance in the kitchen," Robert said with a chuckle. "So, sometimes I just hold her hands and sway a little. My knees don't let me do much, but her smile tells me it's enough." Linda echoed that feeling. "He's not the man I married," she said, "but in some ways, he's even better. He listens more. He notices more. He remembers to bring me my favorite scarf when it's chilly." Their physical connection had changed inevitably. Intimacy, once fiery and frequent, was now tender and slow. Sometimes it meant nothing more than holding hands while watching a movie, or the soft brush of lips on a forehead. But there was no sense of loss. Only transformation. "We've grown into a new kind of closeness," Linda said. "And I wouldn't trade that for anything." The language of small things. Every morning, before Linda woke up, Robert would quietly make the bed and smooth out the pillows. Not because he had to, but because he wanted her to begin the day feeling cared for. If she had a headache, he'd boil ginger and honey without asking. If her favorite book was missing, he'd search the whole house until he found it tucked under the couch cushions. These gestures weren't romantic in the cinematic sense. But they were daily proof of love, steady, sincere, and deeply human. "People think love fades with age," Robert said. "But I think it just becomes less about fireworks and more about warmth. You don't need sparks when you've built a fire that lasts." One night, after a long day of errands and grandkid sitting, Linda mentioned that her back was sore. Robert, without a word, warmed a towel and placed it gently across her shoulders. Then he sat behind her and began to massage her neck. "I didn't even have to ask," she recalled, eyes misty. "That's what love looks like now. Not roses or diamonds. Just noticing. Growing old, growing closer." In a culture obsessed with youth, older couples like Linda and Robert often feel invisible. Their love doesn't trend on social media. They don't post selfies or wear matching t-shirts. But their love is real. More real, perhaps, than most whirlwind romances. Because theirs is a love forged in the ordinary, a love that has been tested and softened and reshaped over time. It is resilient. It is wise. And it is still alive. "When I told Robert I was feeling old and unattractive," Linda said, "he looked at me and said, 'You may grow old, but my love for you never will.'" Those words stayed with her. Not because they were poetic, but because they were sincere. Robert didn't say them to impress. He said them because they were true. He had seen her through illness, worry, sleepless nights, and triumphs. He had watched her age and still thought she was the most beautiful woman in the room. And Linda? She never needed grand declarations. Just the way he rubbed her hands when they were cold, or laughed at her bad jokes, or turned down the bed when she forgot. Those were the ways he told her, I still love you. I still choose you. Love isn't lost with time, it's refined. Too often, society equates aging with decline. But Linda and Robert's story is a reminder that some things get better with age, like understanding, tenderness, and emotional depth. Yes, their bodies were changing. Sex was less frequent. Energy didn't come as easily. But affection, connection, intimacy, those had matured. They had become richer, fuller, more nuanced. It's like learning a new dance, Robert said. The steps are slower now, but the rhythm is stronger. The couple had also learned to talk more openly about their needs, physical and emotional. They didn't shy away from vulnerability. If I'm hurting, Linda said, I tell him. If he needs space, he tells me. We don't guess anymore. We ask. That emotional clarity had become their greatest strength. Because when passion fades, presence matters more. When adventure slows, attention matters more. When excitement quiets, empathy matters more. The power of being seen. In one quiet moment, as they sat sipping tea on the porch, Linda looked at Robert and said, Thank you for not giving up on loving me in new ways. Robert smiled and replied, Thank you for letting me learn how. That's the beauty of aging together, you get to keep falling in love with each other's changes. And while the world rushes by chasing youth, speed, and spectacle, people like Linda and Robert remind us of a truth far more enduring. Love doesn't expire. It evolves. In the gentle rituals of ordinary life, love can grow even stronger. A folded blanket. A shared laugh. A quiet evening walk. These moments are not small. They are everything. Part 2, Emotional Intimacy over Physical Perfection. Linda once believed that love had to be expressed through grand gestures and physical attraction. That was what the movies showed: kisses in the rain, passion in dimly lit bedrooms, smooth skin, and strong arms that never aged. But over time, life taught her something gentler and far more enduring. Emotional intimacy lasts longer than physical perfection. She and Robert no longer chased the romance of youth, they had discovered something better. Love without pretending. It happened gradually. The kids moved out. The mirrors showed new lines. Energy dipped. Date nights became nights in. And those once spontaneous kisses turned into forehead pecks, full of affection but light on fire. At first, Linda worried. I didn't feel beautiful anymore, she confessed. I'd see my body change and wonder, is he still attracted to me? I used to wear perfume to bed. Now I wear a heating pad. She laughed when she said it, but there was a real ache behind the words. Then one evening, as she changed into her pajamas, Robert looked at her, really looked, and said, I know your body has changed. So has mine. But when I hold you, I feel home. That was the moment she stopped trying to hide. From that night on, their connection wasn't about youthful appearance. It was about being emotionally naked, not just physically exposed. And that required something rare, total honesty. Vulnerability becomes a bridge. In their younger years, vulnerability had felt risky, like admitting weakness. Now, it felt like the most intimate gift they could give each other. Robert began to share more than he used to. He talked about his worries about health, about losing people, about not being the man he once was. And instead of trying to fix it, Linda simply listened. She began to share her fears too, about becoming invisible as an older woman, about aches and forgetfulness, about being left behind. And Robert didn't tease or minimize. He held her hand and said, We'll face it all together. That kind of emotional safety became their new intimacy. No pretenses. No roles to play. Just two people who had chosen each other not because they were perfect, but because they were real. The quiet power of listening. Emotional intimacy isn't built overnight. It's layered through moments of attentive listening, shared silence, and deep understanding. In their home, that looked like sitting quietly with a cup of tea while one of them cried about a friend who passed. Asking, Are you okay, not just out of habit but with the patience to hear the answer. Talking honestly about desires and fears, even when the words came slowly. One night, Linda told Robert something she had held inside for years. When we stopped being intimate as often, I felt like maybe I wasn't wanted anymore. Robert's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I just didn't want to pressure you. I thought you needed space." In that one conversation, years of misunderstanding melted away. And in its place, a new kind of closeness emerged, one based not on assumption, but on communication. They weren't reading each other's minds. They were reading each other's hearts. Compassion over comparison. In a world of filtered photos and celebrity news, it's easy to compare. To think, we were not like them. We were not passionate enough. Not adventurous enough. But Linda and Robert had let go of comparison. Instead, they focused on compassion for themselves and each other. Linda no longer judged her body for what it wasn't. She celebrated it for what it had survived: childbirth, surgeries, fatigue, aging. Robert no longer compared their intimacy to what it used to be. He embraced what it had become: slower, quieter, but richer with trust. They didn't need perfect bodies. They needed safe spaces. They needed kind words, shared laughter, and open hearts. That was their intimacy now. Touch isn't just physical, it's emotional. Yes, they still touched each other. They still held hands. Still curled up under blankets together. Still kissed goodnight. But more importantly, they touched each other emotionally with affirming words, loving glances, and the ability to say "I need you" without shame. Robert had once bought Linda a necklace for her birthday. Now, he wrote her little notes and left them on her pillow. One read: "You make the ordinary feel sacred. I hope I never forget how lucky I am to grow old with you." She kept it tucked in her journal. Not because it was grand, but because it was true. Sex isn't gone, it's just evolved. One of the most difficult parts for aging couples is navigating physical intimacy after menopause, illness, or decreased libido. Linda and Robert didn't avoid the topic. They redefined it. Some nights were just cuddles. Some nights were more. There was no pressure, no shame, and no performance. "We focus more on connection than climax," Robert said honestly. "We laugh, we hold each other, and we keep exploring what feels good emotionally and physically." They were still lovers. But they were also teammates, companions, caretakers, and best friends. And that made their intimacy deeper than ever. A love that feels like home. Linda once said something that stayed with Robert for weeks. "You don't make me feel young again. You make me feel safe." In that sentence was the entire heart of emotional intimacy. It wasn't about chasing the past. It was about cherishing the present and holding hands into the future. They had built a love that felt like home. A love that didn't need sparks to burn. A love that could sit in silence and still feel full. When friends asked them how they kept the romance alive, Linda would say, "We stopped trying to be perfect. We just try to be present." That was enough. That was everything. Part 3, Acts of Love That Speak Louder Than Words. There's a saying, "Don't tell me you love me, show me." And for Linda and Robert, that's exactly what growing old together had come to mean. They didn't say "I love you" dozens of times a day. Instead, they showed it through hundreds of tiny, quiet actions that spoke more powerfully than any romantic line ever could. Because when you're in your 60s, 70s, or beyond, love is less about fireworks and more about showing up every single day. 1. The morning rituals that say "I care." Every morning, Robert wakes up a little earlier than Linda. He heads to the kitchen, brews her favorite tea green with a hint of ginger and sets it beside her spot on the table. Some mornings, he places a tiny note beneath the cup. "I dreamed of you. You looked beautiful last night." Still my favorite part of the day. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't take more than a minute. But it means everything. And Linda? She folds the blanket just the way he likes it at night. She makes sure the heating pad is turned on for his back before he even asks. She listens to the same story he's told a dozen times because that's what love sounds like when it grows older. These daily rituals may look ordinary from the outside, but to the people inside the story, they are sacred. To the care that doesn't feel like a chore. Robert's knees aren't what they used to be. Neither is Linda's vision. But they've learned to work around each other's limits with tenderness, not frustration. When Linda struggles with her buttons, Robert gently helps. When Robert forgets where he left his glasses, Linda finds them and hands them back with a smile instead of a sigh. "We're not taking care of each other like nurses," Linda once said. "We're taking care of each other like soulmates." That care extends even to their toughest moments, the doctor's appointments, the medications, the tired days when even walking feels like work. But they never make each other feel like a burden. Because when love is true, care becomes a privilege, not an obligation. 3. Knowing what the other needs. Without asking. After 40 years together, Linda and Robert have developed a quiet language. One without words. She can tell when he's overwhelmed just by the way he puts down his fork. He knows when her back aches by the way she shifts in her chair. She doesn't have to ask for help reaching the top shelf. He doesn't have to be reminded to call their grandson on his birthday. There's beauty in this kind of knowing. It only comes with time. And it's this deep, wordless understanding that makes older love feel so safe. Robert once said, "We may not be able to do what we used to, but we understand each other better than we ever have." That's a kind of intimacy most couples spend a lifetime chasing and only a few ever reach. 4. The gentle reassurance that never stops. Aging can come with insecurity. Linda knows this well. There are days she looks in the mirror and sighs at the silver in her hair, the softness of her body, the changes she never imagined. But Robert never lets her forget how he sees her. "You're still the woman I fell in love with," he whispers as they dance slowly in the living room. Some nights, when she feels distant or self-conscious, he'll kiss the back of her hand and say, "You are more beautiful to me now than ever before." And he means it. Because what he sees isn't just skin. It's memory. History. Devotion. It's the woman who raised their children. Held his hand through surgeries. Cooked him soup when he was sick. Laughed at his old jokes. Stayed. To Robert, aging hasn't dimmed Linda's beauty, it's revealed it. 5. Celebrating the small stuff like it's the big stuff. Linda and Robert don't need anniversary cruises or diamond gifts. Their celebrations are simple. Ice cream on the porch after dinner. Dancing slowly to old records on Sunday mornings. Watching birds from the kitchen window and naming them. They mark the passing of time with smiles, not status. 1 year, for their anniversary, Robert gave Linda a homemade coupon book. It included 1 free foot massage, 1 long walk at your pace, 1 day where I do the dishes and you just rest. She laughed. She cried. She used every single one. Because when you've weathered 4 decades together, you learn that joy lives in the tiniest corners. 6. The legacy of their love. Perhaps the most powerful part of Linda and Robert's relationship is how it impacts those around them. Their children now know what lasting love looks like, not perfect, but enduring. Their grandchildren watch them hold hands and understand that romance doesn't have an expiration date. Even their friends admire how they treat each other with softness, kindness, and attention. They are living proof that love doesn't fade with age, it deepens. And in a world that often rushes past older couples, Linda and Robert are quietly rewriting the rules. You can be sexy at 70. You can be emotionally connected after menopause. You can be romantic with wrinkles. They've built a love that teaches by example, not just how to fall in love, but how to stay there. Final reflection: what lasting love really means. At the end of it all, Linda and Robert don't measure their relationship by how often they go out, how exciting their sex life is, or how many compliments they receive. They measure it by how often they laugh, how quickly they forgive, how tightly they hold each other when the world feels heavy. They measure it by how much they still want to be together even after 40 years. Not because they have to, but because they choose to every single day. And maybe, that's the real secret. Not big declarations. Not constant passion. But a million small moments that say, "I'm still here. I still love you. And I always will."